The landscapes of the Pacific Northwest whisper stories of untold centuries. Beneath the bustling cities and quiet towns of Southwest Washington lie the fragments of old civilizations, a profound and complex history often buried by the passage of time. This is a story of a people who, for over a century, were rendered unseen in their own homeland, yet never lost their name, their identity, or their connection to the land that had sustained them since time immemorial. They are the Cowlitz, and they call themselves the Forever People. Their journey is a testament to the profound power of memory, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of a people determined to defy extinction. The traditional homeland of the Cowlitz people was a vast, intricate territory defined by the river systems that fed the mighty Columbia. From the high mountain headwaters to the fertile lowlands, their villages dotted the landscape, connected by a network of rivers that served as their highways. This intimate relationship with the land and water shaped every aspect of their lives and gave their culture its unique character. The name Cowlitz itself, which translates to seekers of the medicine spirit, reflects a deep spiritual and practical connection to the healing power of the land and its natural resources. The Cowlitz were not a single monolithic group, but a diverse and highly adapted people organized into distinct strongholds, each with unique linguistic and cultural traits shaped by their environment. The lower Cowlitz, for example, were a predominantly Salish-speaking people whose culture was deeply tied to the multi-water ecosystems of the rain zones west of the Cascades. They were renowned for their brilliantly constructed, stylized canoes and their expert basket weaving. Their proficiency extended to the river itself, where they became adept at constructing river weirs and nets to harvest large numbers of fish, including exotic species like sturgeon and lamprey. In contrast, the Upper Cowlitz, also known as the Tidnapum, were true mountain dwellers. They inhabited the upper meadows and prairies, living in close proximity to mountain streams and river headwaters. Their skill in hunting mountain goats was unparalleled, as they relied on these animals not just for food, but also for clothing and utensils. The Upper Cowlitz had a unique skill for weaving goat hair and subfur into highly prized blankets and garments, which were used by families or traded as valuable commodities. Their culture was also influenced by frequent intermarriages with Sahaptin-speaking peoples from east of the Cascades, a blending of languages that eventually led to a mixed Sahaptin dialect. A third group, the mysterious Qualiaqua Cowlitz, were migratory Athapascan-speaking people who roamed the rolling hills of the Willapa area. Their villages were likely located along the Willapa River and the lands south of the Chehalis River. They developed a unique vocabulary that included a mixture of Cowlitz words before their language faded from the region around the 1830s. The fact that their language, Athapascan, is also spoken by Apache tribes thousands of miles away in Arizona and New Mexico continues to intrigue anthropologists and ethnohistorians. A defining characteristic that distinguished the Cowlitz from many of their coastal neighbors was their mastery of horsemanship. They were among the most accomplished horsemen west of the Cascades, a skill enabled by the expansive prairies of their territory that provided ample grazing for their herds. The land itself, shaped by ancient floods and fires, created the perfect environment for this horse culture to flourish. This adaptability to both mountain and prairie environments, combined with their proficiency on the water, demonstrates a highly versatile and resilient culture. The holistic nature of the Cowlitz lifeway meant that subsistence was not merely about survival. It was a worldview that intertwined history, culture, traditional values, and customs. Their vast and adaptable economy was rooted in hunting, fishing, and gathering, but it was also supported by an extensive trade network that reached far beyond their immediate territory, stretching as far as Northern California, Ohio, and Alaska. Their ability to speak multiple languages, honed through constant intermarriages and diplomatic relationships, made them exceptionally skilled traders,
and allowed for a rich exchange of goods and ideas. This fluidity of identity and culture, however, became a critical vulnerability in the face of a colonizing power that demanded rigid, singular definitions. The fact that early European and American records were filled with a litany of mistaken identities is a direct reflection of this complex, multilingual, and highly decentralized social structure. The 19th century brought a dramatic and tragic shift. The arrival of European and American explorers and traders, starting in 1811 with agents from the Pacific Fur Company, marked a turning point from which the Cowlitz world would be forever changed. Initially, these interactions were focused on trade, but they inadvertently introduced a far more lethal force: disease. A virulent Asian influenza epidemic in the late 1820s and 1830s swept through the region, devastating native populations that lacked immunity to these foreign illnesses. White observers recounted seeing entire villages wiped out, with no one left to tend to the dead and dying. This catastrophic loss of life weakened the Cowlitz people and other indigenous societies, just as American colonizers were beginning their western expansion. The central conflict of the Cowlitz story revolves around their refusal to sign a treaty. In the 1850s, as the U.S. government sought to consolidate tribal lands, Washington's Governor Isaac Stevens negotiated a series of treaties to move indigenous peoples onto reservations. The Cowlitz were asked to leave their ancestral homeland and relocate to the Olympic Peninsula, to a reservation to be shared with the Quinault, a tribe with whom they had no linguistic or cultural ties. The Cowlitz people, with a deep connection to their traditional territory, made a courageous and defining decision. They refused to sign the treaty. They saw this as a betrayal of their identity and their sacred duty to the land. They would not abandon their rivers and prairies for an alien coast. The consequences of this refusal were immediate and long-lasting. The 1855 treaty with the Cowlitz was never signed or ratified, leaving the Cowlitz without a legal land base or federal protection. Without a treaty, the federal government, without legal authorization, proceeded to open up the Cowlitz vast lands to non-Indian settlement. The Cowlitz people were scattered throughout southwestern Washington and northern Oregon, enduring over 150 years of landlessness and disenfranchisement. They became the Unseens, a people without a legal existence in their own ancestral home. Their traditional practices, language, and culture were forced underground, practiced in secret circles to avoid a world that had tried to erase them. The Cowlitz' pre-contact strength, their multilingualism and intermarriage for diplomacy, ironically, became a vulnerability in the post-contact world. A fluid and decentralized social structure that was functional for trade and alliances in their traditional society became a liability under a colonial government that demanded a singular, centralized authority to sign a treaty. Their strategic decision to protect their culture by refusing the treaty, while an act of profound self-preservation, left them in a state of legal limbo. This created a profound clash between their internal oral history and the rigid paternalistic administrative structures of the federal government. For over a century, the Cowlitz were a people without a land base, a ghost in the records of the federal government, but they were never truly gone. Their survival during this period is a testament to the power of cultural memory. They endured by blending into local communities, taking jobs and living in different places while secretly preserving their traditions and identity. The Cowlitz were, in the words of a modern tribal member, stubbornly backed away from the edge of extinction. The fight for federal recognition was a long, arduous legal battle, a bureaucratic war that lasted for decades. Early 20th century chiefs like Atwin Stockham began to formalize political relations with the United States in 1906, and by 1912, the Cowlitz had formally reorganized with elected officers and a board of directors to advance their cause. This led to a claim against the government for compensation for their land, which was finally resolved with an Indian Claims Commission judgment in 1973. However, official recognition remained elusive. In 1975, the tribe submitted a formal petition for federal acknowledgement to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. This initiated a process that would last for a quarter century. The BIA's evaluation was a meticulous administrative review that treated the tribe's existence as a legal problem to be solved, not a living reality. The process was further complicated by litigation from the Quinault Nation, a third party in the proceedings. Finally, after a monumental effort, the Cowlitz Indian tribe was granted federal recognition in 2000. The decision was signed by Assistant Secretary, Indian Affairs, Kevin Gover, and upheld after a 2-year appeal process. For a people who had maintained their identity for centuries, it was a belated but profound acknowledgement of their cohesiveness. But recognition was only the first step. A reservation, a physical land base, was still needed. The Cowlitz then had to fight for years to establish a land trust, facing administrative delays and legal challenges. This period was particularly significant as the Cowlitz were the first tribe to have land taken into trust after a key Supreme Court decision, making their case a landmark in tribal law.
Finally, after a struggle that spanned more than 150 years since the refusal of the 1855 treaty, the Department of the Interior acquired land in trust for the Cowlitz Reservation in 2015. All litigation was resolved in their favor in 2017. The long road home was finally complete. The historical timeline of the Cowlitz struggle for recognition and a reservation reveals a stark contrast between indigenous and federal perspectives on time and history. The Cowlitz lived with an unbroken cultural memory that transcended the decades of legal non-existence. In contrast, the government required a 25-year bureaucracy to confirm their tribal status and another 8 years to take their land into trust. The BIA's process, with its criteria, comment periods, and technical reports, reduced a living people to a series of administrative hurdles, underscoring the inherent clash between tribal sovereignty and colonial administrative structures. With their reservation established and their sovereignty restored, the Cowlitz Indian tribe has entered a new era of self-determination. They have transformed the struggle of being unseen into the power of a sovereign nation, using their newfound resources to build a future for their people while honoring the past. The engine of this economic rebirth is the Ilani Resort and Entertainment Center, a multi-million-dollar casino financed in partnership with the Mohegan tribe. With estimated annual revenues in the hundreds of millions of dollars, the resort has enabled the Cowlitz to achieve economic self-sufficiency and fund the governmental services that were denied to them for so long.